both?
Okay, both.
Okay.
One specifies what I should replace with 2. The other one specifies that I should replace something with 2. Okay, so what? Let me just spell, kind of re-explain that. This is the action. Okay, when I get back to line 6, this is what I do. I return 1 plus 1, which is effectively returning 2. That's the action. Okay, but what am I acting on? Okay, this specifies what I have to do, but what am I acting it on? I'm acting it on, I have to find a return info cell to copy, paste, and then change the question mark, right? I cannot be using column H anymore because column H is deallocated by the time I execute line 6. So that means I have to be using column F to give me the return info cell. Okay? So that means, if I just use the screen recorder here, the cell H19 is the action I'm going to perform. But I'm acting it on column F. And that's why I'm returning 2, which means that I have to find a return info cell to replace a question mark with 2. But which cell am I replacing? Well, I'm using F9, copy and paste it, and replace the question mark with a 2. Okay? Yep. So that means the important part of this whole thing is to identify which statement am I executing, because I have this return statement here, I have this return statement here. I am executing the statement H19. Okay, it specifies what I have to do. Okay, it tells me that I have to go find a return info cell, copy and paste it, and change the question mark to 2. Okay, then the next question is, what am I going to do it on? I mean, which return info cell am I going to use? I cannot be using column H because column H is fully resolved at this point that there are no question marks anymore. And furthermore, it is deallocated. So that means I have to use the context of column F to perform this action. So I'm executing the statement of H19, but using column F as the object to manipulate. Are we doing okay so far? This is my verb, and that's my, object in the sentence. The program is doing this on this object, and this is the result. Are we doing okay so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I can even use, let me see if I can do this part here. Because I think this is actually the essence, if we make sure that this is good and everybody understands this, then I think we are good. So I'll go ahead and say, this is my verb. In other words, it specifies an action. And please don't tell your English professor that I'm teaching, grammar in my programming class. Because I'm pretty sure some English professor would get kind of upset that I'm not qualified to do this. So this is my verb, which specifies what I'm going to do. But what am I doing it to is my object. This is my object here. So I'm just going to do this a little bit. Okay. I'm just borrowing, words from, English grammar so that we can, have a better understanding of what the program is actually doing. And this is the result, okay? If I do this on here, this becomes my result. And I like to align everything just right, just like that. That's my result. Are we doing okay so far with this? Does it make it better or does it make it worse? Better? Okay. There's no subject because the subject is the computer or the interpreter that executes the program. And obviously, if you guys are really into English grammar and stuff like that, you can add all kinds of adjectives too. Like confusingly, it is doing this. Are we doing okay? Yep.
So the reason we're doing on column H, the reason we're doing 2 invocations is because it has an invocation within an invocation, so it's sending us back to sub 3.
No, it's not because we have an invocation in an invocation. It's because we have 2 invocations on the same line, and we can only perform 1 invocation at a time. So when we are done with the first invocation, we will still have a second invocation to deal with. Okay? This is no different. Okay, I'm hoping that some of you still remember this one. So you still remember that we have an example where we have print, and then the first one is like invoke 5 plus invoke 7 or something like that. It's no different from that particular example. Okay, you have to perform both invocations in order to perform the addition. Then you can determine what you're printing. It's really about the same thing, except the context is just a little bit different. Okay, are we okay? Shall we proceed? Okay. So line 6 is done. Okay, this line 6 has done its job, which is to replace the question mark with a value of 2. What do we do after line 6? According to this code here, when I'm done with line 6, we have to move on to line 8. Is that okay? Is everybody convinced that we are done with line 6? Okay. So we now go to line 8. Line 8 is the end of a subroutine, which means we're going to deallocate column F and column G in this case, and we'll say, okay, we can free up these 2 columns so we can reuse the 2 columns for something else later on. Where do we go back to now?
6.
We have to go back to line 6. But what does line 6 look like?
Return to line 2.
Exactly. Okay. So the line 6 that we are returning to will be specified by F21. So F21 now becomes my verb. Okay, it tells me what to do. So let me just scroll the screen a little bit here. I think I need to scroll the tops just so that we can see enough of the context that we're in. Okay, so this tells me everything that I need to know, because this becomes my verb. Okay, so if I want to do, I can copy and paste this, except this time this becomes my verb. It tells me what to do, but what am I acting on in this case? I'm acting on this part here. So that means, when on column B, when we specify what line to execute next, we specify we execute on line 6 next. But what we're executing on line 6 in this case, am I done here? Can I return?
No.
In other words, if I look at F21, am I ready to go find some return info and turn the question mark into some value? I'm not done yet because I don't know what the other invoke is going to do. So that means I have to invoke S3 again, and this time I also specify n-1 to pass to n. Okay. So that's why I'm back here. N is 2 in this case, but right away I have to invoke again. So line 6 is, I'm executing line 6 again, this time because I have to invoke this portion here. So that means the return info looks like this. I'm taking care of the invocation on the right-hand side of the addition in this case.
Is our n still 0?
No. Well, you tell me what n is supposed to be. Hold on a second. I forgot one thing. I forgot to label the column. Okay. And every time you invoke S3, you have to pass a parameter n. So what is this? What is column G supposed to be in this case?
1.
It's supposed to be 1 because when I execute this verb here, okay, when I treat this verb, I'm executing it in the context of column D and column E, which means the n-1, the n of the n-1 is using column E. Column E has a value of 2, 2 minus 1 is 1, and that's why column G, which is now reused, has a value of 1. Are we doing okay so far?
Well, now don't we have to go back to 3?
Yep, now we have to go back to line 3 again. And line 3 will say that n equals 0 is false, which means we have to go to line 6 again. And line 6 wants to do another invocation. So that means we have to reuse column H and column I. And this portion, it will look exactly the same as before. I mean, it looks literally exactly the same as before. But we'll just go ahead and do it also. You know, I won't take any shortcuts. So we are reallocating column H in this case for return info. And this is the first time we execute this line 6. So nothing has been done so far, which means we have to say that this is going to be return question mark, because that's the invocation I'm dealing with at this point, and the rest will look like that.
We don't return the 2?
We don't return the 2.
Return 2 plus question mark?
No, because this is the first time we are here. Okay. Let me clarify where we are at this point. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Okay, let's roll all the way back to this point. Okay, let's roll all the way back to this point, which means I have to scroll the screen a little bit like this. Okay. When we are done on line 8 of row 23 of the trace, we are deallocating column F and column G. Column F, which is return info, tells me I have to go back to line 6. And that's why I'm back to line 6. Okay? But what does line 6 look like? Line 6 looks exactly like what F21 is telling me, which means I'm not ready to actually execute the return statement. I still have the right-hand side of the invocation to deal with. As a result, I am invoking S3 again, and this time with n equals to 1. Is that okay? And that's why we got back to line 3, because we're invoking S3 with 1 as my parameter. We get back to line 3. Line 3 asks, does n equal to 0? No, that's not equal to 0 because n equals to 1. That makes me go to line 6, but this is the first time I get to this particular line 6. So on line 6, being the first time I get here, the first thing I have to do is to resolve what is the invocation of the left-hand side. If I want to find out what is the return value of the left-hand side, I have to invoke the subroutine. I have to invoke S3, and as a result, return info looks like this because we are once again resolving the left-hand side of the invocation.
How do you resolve the left-hand side on row 21?
On row 21, but that's a different invocation.
You carried it down to 24. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm handling the right-hand side of this invocation.
It looks like a different iteration to me. Like we went through the loop, and now we're going through the loop again.
It is kind of like a loop, but it's not. Okay, let me. Okay, let me just kind of go back here. This is what we're trying to execute. Okay, let me just go back to the context where it belongs. This is what I try to execute when we are on row 23. Is that okay? Because that's what return does. Am I ready to return a value in this case? No, because I have another invocation, right?
You have the right-hand side.
I have to handle the right-hand side, and that's why I'm handling the right-hand side here. See, the question mark is telling me that I'm invoking S3 for the right-hand side. And that's also why n equals to 1, because in this case, n, when I invoke, I'm using column P and column E as my context, and n equals to 2.